Welcome everybody to today's session of REYES. If this is the first time you're joining us to REYES, welcome. This is a program that is being hosted by Old Dominion University, and it's a program where we're trying to make scientific content and content of engineering freely available to you from experts from the area as well as across the world. Today we have a very special treat. So I'm very happy to be able to present our next speaker. His name is Andrew Dodson. He is a ODU physics alumnus, so he graduated from ODU from my department actually. So it's a real treat to have him. He's currently pursuing his graduate degree at New Mexico State University, studying theoretical nuclear physics. He hopes to be a theoretical nuclear physicist someday. He's already working on research in that direction. He's also an active content creator, and YouTube has close to 150,000 followers. And so what he does is trying to make scientific content accessible to people that are trying to get engaged. And so it's a real pleasure to have him talk about a topic that falls naturally between his two interests, science and scientific communication. So with that, please, Andrew, take it away. And also, let me say one last thing. If you have any questions for Andrew, feel free to send them, and then I'll share them with him at the end of the talk. So the mic is all yours, Andrew. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the very nice introduction, and especially for inviting me to speak. I appreciate it. So, as he said, my name's Andrew. I'm an alum from ODU. I go to New Mexico State University. And today I'm going to be talking about my unorthodox approach to science communication. I'm just going to minimize roll screen so that doesn't distract me. Okay, cool. So as a bit of background, I am studying theoretical nuclear physics. This is kind of how I like to see myself when I'm in my more theoretical classes, whereas when I'm in my experimental nuclear physics class, it's more like this. I'm scared, alone. I don't know how to use a hammer. But on top of that, I also make physics videos on YouTube. So this is also by day. And I've been doing this for coming up on 4 years now. For this talk, I'm not going to be talking about my research. If there are questions at the end, feel free to ask. But I'm really going to be focusing on my physics YouTube channel, why I started it, and kind of the direction it's headed over the years. There's no shortage of the popularizers, the science popularizers that talk about those really big, interesting topics in physics, modern physics, like black holes, dark matter, string theory. And if you're like me, that gives you this skewed idea of what studying physics is really like. It does its job in that it reels those prospective physics students in, but then, like I said, if you're like me, you go into physics expecting maybe something else. Maybe you expect to be the student that's using mechanics and gravity, but instead you get friction and motion on a plane. If you're lucky, instead of a box on a plane, you'll describe a ball rolling down a plane, which is way more exciting, I'm told. My goal for the talk is not to convince you that these popular science topics make their way into the physics classroom to make it meet your expectations, but rather that there needs to be more exposition on what studying physics is actually like when you're there. We have the people that get you reeled in, but maybe there should be more people that are explaining what you can really expect, and in a way that keeps you here, in a way that keeps you interested. I think that the way that can be best communicated is through YouTube. So part of what I do is I talk about the courses that I'm taking, and I talk about my overall experience. I go over these types of vlogs where I go through the classes that I'm taking and points in physics, and just overall how I'm feeling with everything. And so I want to talk about how I do this, how I communicate these experiences, and how it's kind of changed over time. So first things first, I didn't actually start out as a physics major. I started out as a biology student at Virginia Commonwealth University. and like 90% of the biology students there, I was there because I thought that I wanted to become a medical doctor. Studying biology is the typical thing that you do. And at least in my experience, maybe it's different for other people. I assume it definitely is the farther you go into biology. But for me, it was a lot of memorization. It was a lot of memorizing steps and cycles. And it's kind of like physics in that you take the same classes kind of over and over again. It's iterative. And each time you take it, you go a little bit deeper. But in my experience for the biology, it wasn't explaining the steps specifically. It was just like why these steps happened. It was just explaining what the steps were. And maybe that's why I didn't enjoy it so much, is because that's how I treated it. And I didn't know any better because there was no consequence to not treating it that way. Me and my friends would go to the library and study for hours by just memorizing these cycles. There was a point where I knew every single term in this cycle. Oxaloacetate combines with H2O and does all this other stuff, but I can never tell you why it did that. And it was around this time that I came across a famous physicist named Richard Feynman. And if you don't mind, I'm going to play a quick clip from him. If you don't know about Richard Feynman, it's an honor to be the person that turns you on to him for the first time. Let's just watch this clip. I maximized the screen, but it won't let me.
Feynman is in the forefront of one of the oldest and most intriguing games of hide-and-seek in science, finding the ultimate constituents of the world. In this search, Feynman is a celebrated maverick who was encouraged by his father, a New York clothing salesman, to confront conventional wisdom.
One Sunday, all the kids were all walking in little parties with their fathers in the woods. Then the next Monday, we were playing in a field, and the kid said to me, "Say, what's that bird? What's the name of it? Do you know the name of that bird?" I says, "I haven't the slightest idea." He said, "Well, it's a brown-throated thrush." He says, "Your father doesn't teach you anything." But my father had already taught me about the names of birds. Once we walked and he says, "That's a brown-throated thrush." He says, "What's the name of that bird?" It's a brown-throated thrush. In German, it's called a Flügelflögel. In Chinese, it's called a Qinglongtong. In Japanese, a Tohatoha, and so on. And when you know all the names in every language of that bird, you know nothing, but absolutely nothing about the bird. And then we would go on and talk about the pecking and the feathers. So I had learned already that names don't constitute knowledge. It's knowing the name of something. That's caused me a certain trouble since, because I refuse to learn the name of anything. So when someone comes in and says, "You got any explanation for the Fitz-Cronin experiment?" I says, what's that? He says, "You know, that the long-lived K meson disintegrates into two pies." Oh, yes, now I know. But I never know the names of things. What he forgot to tell me was that knowing the names of things is useful if you want to talk to somebody else.
I remember seeing that clip for the first time among the many other clips that Richard Feynman has. He's definitely got a fantastic way of explaining things. And that in particular really, really resonated with me. Names don't constitute knowledge. I think explains why I was so unhappy in biology, because that's exactly how I was treating it, just knowing the names of a bunch of different things, and that was the extent of it. When you learned those, there were more things to learn the names of. And again, that's just how I was treating it. If you do biology correctly, I'm sure it's much more enjoyable and you can actually explore the different mechanisms that guide these processes. But I just didn't have that mindset. And there was one time when I came home on break and I went to my dad's house, and he was asking me about school, how I was enjoying school. And I started talking about all of these things that I saw on Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking and Cosmos with Carl Sagan. And he stopped me and he said, "When you come home, you are never talking about how cool the brain is or the different systems of the body. All you do is you talk about these crazy theories that you see on TV." And he kind of planted the seed in my mind that maybe physics was more for me. That's what got me excited, not the things that I was learning in biology. So after a long time of consideration, I realized that he was right. And Old Dominion University was a good deal cheaper to go to than Virginia Commonwealth. And the only reason I was at VCU to begin with was to kind of increase my chances of getting into medical school. But since I decided that wasn't for me, it made sense to go back home. So I registered for classes at Old Dominion University. I have a plane here. ODU's like 2 hours away. I didn't actually fly, not that that matters. But I registered for classes at ODU as a physics major, and I wanted to have some idea of what I would expect if I did this. This is a huge change. So I did what I think anyone would do, and I went to YouTube to see what other people's experiences were studying physics, what's around the corner. And I came across a physics YouTuber named Simon Clark, who, for his undergrad or equivalent in the UK, he went to Oxford, and he would make these vlogs communicating what it was like to be a student at Oxford University. And that was very insightful because physics is universal, right? It's not like people at Oxford get access to the secret laws of physics and the rest of us are stuck learning Newton's laws. I mean, maybe they're introduced to spherical harmonics or something earlier, I don't know, but you get the idea. It doesn't matter, the topics that you cover less shouldn't matter in the school. But I couldn't help but wonder if the experience that you had did, if his experience of an Oxford physics student would be different from someone like me who went to, say, a normal four-year university. So what would the day in the life of a not Oxford physics student be? And I figured there was something to this. Maybe there are some people that started taking classes. Maybe there were other people that wanted to see one example of what studying physics was like at these other universities. And I figured I could do that. So I got one of the old camcorders from our house, and I started recording myself making videos of what studying physics was like in my experience. When I started the YouTube channel, I was just recording myself going to and from classes, doing events with SPS, the Society of Physics Students. I would talk about the classes I was having a hard time with. I would talk about the ones I really enjoyed, how I was studying, all of these things. They were very, very, they were very bad videos, very cringy. I didn't really know what I was doing. But one thing that they definitely were was they were honest. They were an honest account of what studying physics was like for me. And I enjoyed talking about what I was learning in these kind of vlogs. I didn't really understand the style of video that was for me, but looking back, I can identify and see that I was really just doing these vlogs, documenting the process of getting a physics degree. And while I was recording these, I wanted to make it so that I wasn't throwing around too many buzzwords or pieces of jargon without explaining what these words meant. So if I was studying for quantum mechanics and I brought up the term Clebsch-Gordon coefficients, I would want to be able to explain what those were. But you can't go too in depth in a vlog. You can't just take this 10-minute tangent to go over the mathematical formalism of the things that I'm learning, which felt kind of limiting. So I branched out into a second kind of video format, which were video lectures. So these were videos where I could be as thorough in a derivation or an explanation as I would want it to be if I was watching the video. I think my video lectures are notoriously thorough because, well, you can always skip an explanation if you want to, but you can't listen to one that was never given. And the cool thing about these kinds of videos is they aged well, or at least they transitioned with me as I went farther and farther in my academic career. So the vlogs followed through, and the lectures that I would give, these derivations, just became more complicated videos. So instead of talking about the kinematic equations, I would talk about tensor calculus for physics, which is an ongoing series of mine. And when I was making these videos, I only had 2 subscribers at first. No one watched them. I was talking to myself. Well, I guess I always do that when I make a video, but no one was watching it when I posted them either. So I had 2 subscribers, my mom and my best friend, who actually convinced me to make a YouTube channel in the first place. And both are very big supporters to this day. I didn't advertise that I was making videos to anyone, none of my friends or family, because I wanted to be sure that when someone subscribed or when someone watched a video, that they did that because they were genuinely interested in what studying physics was like, and they weren't just being a supportive friend. So when I saw that the subscriber count went from 2 to 3, as weird as it sounds, I knew that I was in business. If one person found it, I knew more were there to come. And as I got further in my physics degree, I decided I wanted to try something different. I wanted to make videos that maybe showed the lighter side of physics. So I got a bunch of friends together from the Society of Physics Students, and we came up with a bunch of original physics one-liners and we just tried to make each other laugh. That was, I don't know, a few years ago, those You Laugh, You Lose videos were super popular. So we kind of hopped on the bandwagon there. And they weren't your normal, oh, a neutron walks in bartender says, for you, no charge. These were like technical jokes that were kind of, I don't know, if you wouldn't get the jokes if you weren't a physics student. I think that was kind of the appeal. And so, for example, one of them was a horse walks into a bar at 99% the speed of light. The bartender says to the horse, why the long face? Like these little jokes where if you don't know about length contraction and special relativity, you wouldn't get it. I think people just enjoyed that for some reason. And it definitely got more popular. It wasn't this when I first made this. I think it got like a couple hundred views, which was still insane compared to the videos that I was posting previously, the vlogs, where it was just my mom and my friend watching it. But I realized that it was gaining some traction. My channel was gaining some traction with this because apparently there's a market for these physics comedy videos. Who knew? And all of this was kind of happening the first year that I was making videos, learning how to make videos. And in the first year, I made 25, give or take. And all of those days, I only made 25 videos. And I rationalized that by saying that, oh, I need more time to make better videos, which was complete crap because it didn't matter how much time you gave me. I didn't have the skill set to do anything with that time. It didn't matter if you gave me 2 weeks or a month. The videos I made were the extent of how I knew how to edit. So I wanted to try something new. I gave myself a challenge. I wanted to get better at editing. I wanted to get better at telling a story and coming up with more ideas for making videos. So I gave myself a challenge to facilitate that process or that goal, which was to make a new video every single day for as long as I could. Someone once told me that your first 50 videos are going to be terrible, and you just want to get through that. For me, it was probably more like 100, but I wanted to get that out of the way as fast as possible. You want to find out what works, what doesn't work, you just want to try stuff. So I wanted to do these daily uploads until I felt competent enough at editing to where if I gave myself more time to make a video, I would know what to do with it. And it got to the point where these daily uploads became my thing. It became what I kind of defined the channel to be. People would tune in every day just to watch whatever physics video. So they weren't good videos yet, but they were frequent. Maybe people enjoyed that. Some of them weren't bad. They were nice little tidbits of advice on buying textbooks. But if I make a video every single day, sometimes I'm pressed for time and you get little BuzzFeed quizzes that were horrible. If you ever see quizzes on my channel, that means it was a busy day and I didn't really have time to make a video. And as I started making these videos, eventually got to the time where I was applying for grad school. And I didn't get in right away. So I go to New Mexico State University now, but I didn't get in my first time around. I was rejected. And I made a very risky decision, kind of irresponsible, that I would move here anyway, and I would pay to take classes as non-degree seeking in hopes that I would do really well in the classes, and then the next semester I would reapply and show that I deserve to be here, or that I prove that I have what it takes. So for here, you see 142, and then that's when I made the decision I was moving for grad school, and 117 days later, I got my answer on whether I was accepted or not. Thankfully, I was, by the way. I probably should have mentioned with that, but maybe you could tell with the PowerPoints themselves. So I was accepted into the Ph.D. program. As a little bit of an aside, when I moved here, I had about 8,000 subscribers. And since I was paying to take classes here, I needed a means of income. So one thing that I did was I started offering a Skype tutoring service to my subscribers. And just barely enough registered for this service to where I was able to scrape by my first semester and pay for everything. So it was them who gave me a platform, and it's them who actually gave me the opportunity to pursue this PhD, which I'll always be thankful for. while I was in the process of reapplying for this, I think it's important to note that I didn't just share the good, like the wins, and show, oh, look how wonderful it is to study physics. I think it was important to show all of the times that I had something, namely all the schools that didn't accept me, or maybe tests that I didn't perform well on, or talk about the physics GRE, which I did terribly with. I think that's part of it. I wanted to be as honest as possible with this channel. So that means sharing the good with the bad. We got into school. So for perspective, for the first year, it took me a year to reach 1,000 subscribers. As I started doing the daily uploads in my second year, that went from 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers. So I could tell what was happening. I knew what happened if I kept making these daily uploads. People enjoyed them. People enjoyed the consistency. When I got into the PhD program, I would assume TA responsibilities. I would start doing research. My free time would become a lot more confined. I would have less of it. And I knew that meant new priorities. I wouldn't be able to do these daily uploads for much longer. And that was pretty terrifying. What happened when I stopped doing these daily uploads, which, I felt defined my channel. So that kind of put things to the test. Okay, I've done all of these videos every single day. Have I learned something from it? Am I actually better at editing or telling a story or coming up with these ideas? In that third year, when I stopped making daily uploads, my channel went from 10,000 subscribers to over 100,000. All in all, I ended up making 314 daily physics uploads, which I'm pretty proud of. It was very stressful, but I'm so glad that I did it. If anyone who's interested in making YouTube videos, I think it's a good challenge to do. Maybe not that many, but maybe a month of learning how to make these videos. If you just start making videos on YouTube, no one's going to watch them anyways at first. So might as well spend that time making as many as possible and developing that skill. Once I graduated from undergrad, all of the I made kind of changed a little bit. Not to mention, all in all, I realized I was making three kinds of videos. I was making the skits, I was making comedic videos, and I was making these heavier math derivation videos. And over the process of creating a new video every single day, I learned what kinds I really enjoyed making. And that's when I learned that those were the big three that I enjoyed. You may think making physics videos is specific enough, but it is important, I think, to narrow down that concept a little bit more. You're going to be the person that does the animations, or you're going to be the person who does all the fancy math. That's something that you need to explore for yourself. So the vlogs, the comedic videos, and the heavy derivations were what I enjoyed. And in grad school, that didn't change. It was just what I ended up talking about within those sub videos, was changed a little bit. So instead of talking about my undergraduate experience, now I do vlogs on me pursuing my PhD and the research that I'm doing. And I just finished my last semester of graduate level courses, so I was able to talk about all of that stuff. I also make more elaborate sketches now than I used to, where I do collaborations with other people on YouTube that do either physics or math videos. That stuff is always very fun. And the heavier math and physics videos just keep getting more complicated. I don't know how else to phrase that. So it's the kinematic equations, now it's deriving path integrals and things. And these seemed like wildly different formats within physics. We have a video documentation of the process, we have me trying to make you laugh, and then just horrible math videos. But I realized that they all kind of achieve the same result. And what they do is they let students know what's around the corner in a different way. I could give you a list of all of the classes that you're going to take, but again, that's just a bunch of names of things. That doesn't mean anything to you yet. Some people, they come home from class, they just want to watch a story. They want to listen to a story unfold. They watch the vlogs, and they can see the day-to-day experiences that I have with studying physics. Or some people go home, they don't want to watch more. They just lived it for themselves. They don't want to watch a vlog. They want to laugh. So they watch these stupid sketches that I make. And some masochists go out of their way to watch me derive path integrals for an hour. To each their own, I guess. But like I said, in their own way, they let them know what's next, what they can expect if they go my route, per se, in physics. And that may sound like they're the minority, like who would go out of their way to watch these kinds of videos, but they're the majority of the channel. I get so many comments of wanting more, people who say, I never have any clue what he's talking about, but when he turns to that whiteboard, but I want to know one day. I can't wait to know what this stuff means, what all these symbols mean. I see myself in all of these comments. Like Andrew, I think that the equations look really cool. I have no idea what they're talking about, but that's the excitement that provides the motivation to learn and understand. So they see stuff that they don't understand and they want more. If people understand that, yeah, there's those cool fuzzy topics on into the universe and there's actual lectures, but that's not all that there has to be. There can be something in between that people are actually craving. Whenever I see these videos, I get so hyped. College, do the research. One day I'll be there. I wanted to major in physics because of Feynman. Got me excited for it because you talk about the more complicated side. You're not going to scare these students away, and that's it might be a bit unexpected. I know it was for me, but now I am an old man. I can't share any new undergraduate experiences for physics without repeating myself. But a lot of you watching can, whether you're an undergraduate, a grad student. When I am near the end of my Ph.D., I'll be searching YouTube for what's the experience of a postdoc like. I actually searched for that relatively recently. There's hardly anything out there. That's new, unexplored territory. Same goes for professors sharing their experiences. At the beginning, I said I wondered if your experience as a student depends on the university that you go to. I think that's kind of obvious, right? But there's more to it than that as well. When I went through my academic career, I went through it with a certain amount of opportunities and privilege that other people have. And if you just listen to me share my story, that'll give you a good idea of what studying physics is like. So it's incredibly important that those other perspectives be shared as well. And I think that you all should be a part of that. So the main takeaway from this is this new avenue of reaching students that are interested in whatever it is that you do. And I think the more people on YouTube or on these different platforms sharing their story and their experiences. So that is actually going to wrap up my talk. I appreciate you all listening to me ramble on. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. But thank you. I should keep sharing my screen.
Yeah, maybe keep sharing it. Thank you, Andrew. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really great. So there's a little bit of time delay, so questions might take a little bit of time to come in.
Yeah, of course.
I have questions.
Absolutely.
And some comments. So I really liked hearing you mentioned that, the first few videos tend to be crap and you should practice more and more. This is actually exactly what I tell my students in the context of giving talks. I tell them their first 10 talks tend to be crap. And so you should do as many as you can to get those out of the way so you can make progress. Do you feel like, has this helped, being able to present your experience, talk about it, has this affected how when you have to give a research talk or do a presentation in class, or has it even affected your academic career in any way? Has it leaked into the classroom somehow?
Absolutely, 100%. Especially so I didn't really mention it. With the 3 kinds of videos that I make, the one that helps the most is the heavier math, the derivation videos, because it forces you to hold yourself accountable for what it is you know and what it is you're kind of fooling yourself that you know. Because if you're explaining a topic and you say something wrong, the internet is not the most forgiving. People are going to point it out, as they should. And so the process of making the derivation videos makes me scrutinize the research that I do a lot more to make sure I really do understand what I think I understand. And the other part comes from being, I think, a theory student as a whole. For those of you who are watching who maybe haven't attended very many talks in research, if you go to someone who's presenting on theoretical physics versus someone who presents on experimental physics, both can be filled with their own forms of jargon. So you can have the theorist that insists on showing every line of math that they've done. It's important, yeah, but no one wants to see that. And the same goes for the experimentalists that maybe insist on explaining every little piece of equipment, their TMD 497,000F, the new model. It's like understanding what's important to talk about, how to explain something in a concise way is very important, and not just insisting on explaining something just because you spent a lot of time talking about it. That doesn't mean everyone else needs to hear it. So for me specifically, I understand that the math is a description of the physics, and it's important not to necessarily conflate the two. So whenever I explain the math that I go through in my research, I really try to come up with a nice picture of what's going on. So these videos have helped me the most accountable with that.
That's great. Okay, so I have some more questions, but I see there's a couple of questions that that I can go ahead and read. So the first one is from Garvit Madan. They didn't say where they're from, and they ask, how many weeks into your undergrad do you start making videos?
That's a good question. It wasn't my first semester, I don't think. So it was probably my second semester. Must have been. But I can't give you an exact date. But that's my undergrad as a physics student. I spent 2 years studying biology, where I wasn't making any videos.
Right. So this would have been your second semester at ODU.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we have several other questions coming in. The first one is from Rachel White in Virginia Beach, who I think is a ODU physics alumnus as well, asking what experiences throughout your study guided you to focus your research on PQCD, on perturbative QCD?
I can thank Dr. Rogers for that. So I did 2 research experiences. That's a massively important part, not just for if you're considering going to graduate school, but for figuring out what you like in terms of physics is to try to get as many research experiences as you can. My first one was in accelerator physics, which was cool. It was very computationally intensive, which I enjoyed. And my second one was with Dr. Rogers, who does a lot of the phenomenological work at Jefferson Lab and QCD and things like that. And my research with him wasn't actually QCD. I wasn't close to ready for that kind of thing. But that's what ignited kind of the sparks. It was like, oh wow, this is what I think is cool. So research experiences are really good for that. So it wasn't until I got like an REU program that it forces you to explore things in more depth than maybe you would do on like a Friday night in your bed or something like that. And I think that's necessary.
Yeah, I agree. REU programs, which if people don't know, is research experience for undergrad. Those are amazing programs that give you a great opportunity to either figure out what you like, or in my case, I did one and I figured out what I didn't like. So yeah, I highly recommend it. That's really great to hear. Okay, so we have some more questions. Okay, so first from Karim, Karime Berenice Rodriguez Martinez from Nayarit, Mexico, saying, hello, can you mention the name of your YouTube channel again, please? Thanks.
It's just Andrew Dotson.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have a question. This one, okay, so Mikuling Allred from Virginia asking, okay, you know them?
That's hold on, maybe I'll have to hear the question first before I
Okay. First subscriber here, wondering, what do you want to do after your PhD? What specialization / what school to teach at? And then period. Next, Bill Nye or Neil deGrasse, comma, etc., question mark.
So for the record, that's this person right here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I intend on going into perturbative quantum chromodynamics. So QCD is the theory of the strong interaction, one of the four fundamental forces of nature. And so that's the QCD part. The perturbative part means at certain energies, you can find out very well what the answer almost is. So that perturbative just means kind of like approximating, which works in certain regimes. So perturbative QCD is like an approximative method of describing the strong interaction. And that's what's pretty fascinating to me. Personally, I'm interested in a little bit of technical detail. Proton has spin 1/2. Where does it get that spin from is still an unanswered question, or not a very well understood, answer. That's something that I'd like to investigate. And then you said something about Bill Nye, and I have no intention on pushing the YouTube channel much further. I like just talking about the overall procedure of going from an undergraduate to a professor one day. And I think as long as I'm making progress in physics, I'll continue making videos about it. But as far as like TV and things like that, I've already had my TV experience. I'd rather not do that again.
Okay, sounds good. And this reminds me that a comment that I had that you regarding something that you mentioned at the beginning is that I think that it very resonated with me, the message of the beginning part of your talk, saying that there does seem to be a gap between how we romanticize physics and the sciences and all, and how it is actually in practice as a student and a grad student. And I think for me and many people, would have been very useful to hear stories of students going through the process and really learning what it is like in practice, because it can be very challenging. And as you mentioned, getting rejected, right, is a part of the process. And so it's good to hear other people going through it as well. So
Yeah, I think it also helps with imposter syndrome, because making sure that you share the things that you're struggling with, it maybe doesn't get rid of it. I think it helps with other people's idea of how much everyone else understands. If you're not asking questions, then people may assume that you know what's being talked about. And that's really, it's unfortunate and it's sad that so many people go through a physics degree feeling that they don't belong there because they don't think they're smart enough. So that's another thing that I think that just helps remedy a little bit.
yeah. And I really appreciate your last comment of encouraging others to take on this path and have their voices heard, because everybody's path is different, right? And so it does help to hear perspectives from different peoples. And so anyways, that was quite nice, so I appreciate it. So here, let me read a couple more questions. So we have Akshara from Washington State saying, what would you recommend students in high school do if they want to study physics?
There's a lot of room for error between high school and getting a degree, I think. I was a horrible high school student. I didn't even graduate high school with honors. If your school offers a physics class, I think that's number one. The thing that you can do to prepare is start familiarizing yourself with what's out there, what different topics there are, just learning about it and getting excited. I think that's a big thing. Looking at all the things, trying to find out all of the things you're looking forward to learn about. That way it's pulling you towards it rather than you having to push through all of undergrad. So start exploring all of the different branches of physics. And all of the other stuff will come with it.
Very good. And I would say perhaps if you're joining and hearing these kinds of lectures as a high school student, you're way more advanced than I was as a high school student. So
gosh, me too.
Kudos to you.
When I was in high school, I was still convinced I was going to be a professional skateboarder. So if that makes you feel any better.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have a question from Mortimer, and I think they have a fake last name, saying, hello, I recently watched a segment on an interview where Freeman Dyson was criticizing the Ph.D. system. His main point being that focusing on a single research project for 3 years is detrimental for a lot of people. What do you think about this? And then they say, RIP, Mr. Dyson.
Yeah.
I think it's Dr. Dyson, but
I have a huge amount of respect for Dyson. There's always those stories of him being one of the only guys that would check Feynman, especially with the patent. I mean, it's hard to say because, I mean, the point of doing a PhD is to not make this massive contribution to all of science, but to move the needle forward a little bit in one field. There's so much out there, and I think you're biting a little bit more than you can make these wide impacts in such a short amount of time. Having said that, yeah, your PhD is going to be one booklet, but that's going to consist of several different papers and results that you'll have published throughout the years of pursuing it. So you're not necessarily just working on one thing. I'm currently working on 2 different research projects. So if you're worried about doing a PhD, it's not just like, here's the question that I'm answering. Let me have 6 years to answer. You're answering a lot of little things along the way. So maybe I'd have to hear additional context to see what he meant by that. Do you have any insight on that?
In the context of what Dyson said?
Yes.
No, I don't. I mean, I think there is one way you can see it is like you are doing one project in your PhD, but really, I don't think in practice it's ever like that, as you were saying, Andrew. I mean, you in general, you get to work on different projects, but also you get to learn about. I learn most of the time by learning about what my colleagues or my peers were researching about, and so even though I wasn't working in atomic physics, I had colleagues who were, and so I got to go into their labs, hear about what they're doing, learn about, read papers related to atomic physics and other fields in physics. And so I was able to experience a little bit about what other people are doing and learning, and that's part of my education. So I think you can specialize in one research while still learning about many others. I don't know. I don't think it's. I think the PhD program is, in general, the path is quite positive. I think it's a great experience. Okay, so that was my take, but we want to hear more about your takes. Okay, so we have a question. I think this is Mama Dodson, Maureen Dodson, saying, "How do you call me you with your catchphrase? What's going on, smart people? I love it."
What did she say?
I think she said, I think she was trying to say, how did you come up with your catchphrase? But I think there might have been a typo.
Oh, I don't really remember. I think I noticed that a lot of people had something like that on YouTube, and I figured I really can't. I don't know the origin story for the what's going on, smart people. I do know that after I started doing it, I think there's another YouTube channel that started doing it that's larger than mine. So I hope that doesn't run into any. I'm not stepping on any toes with that. Yeah, I don't know where it came from.
Okay.
Not off the top of my head, anyways.
Well, if you remember, you might want to let her know. So Brian, who was part of a trivia night from Medan, Indonesia, says, "Good morning, Andrew Dodson. Long time no see after 4 weeks of trivia night." And then he proceeds to say that your story is very similar to his. And so he was interested in biology, and after some time decided to move towards physics. And so I'll forward you, because it's a little long, so he gives you a little bit of the story. So I'll forward this to you. Okay. And it says, actually, I have a question for you regarding your field. What makes you attracted to particle physics, especially QCD, other than condensed matter, astrophysics, plasma physics, etc.? Hope you still make YouTube videos, and good luck with your PhD degree.
I think a lot of it comes down to, it's not that I'm not interested in other fields. I think I was immersed in a specific field early on, and I liked it. And Like there were other possible avenues that I could have gone into that I think I would have been happy with, besides particle physics, nuclear particle physics. Like for example, I've always really liked general relativity. I think gravitational physics would have been awesome, but this is just the route that I ended up taking. Um, I just really, if you know that you want to do theory, maybe there's a branch of math that you enjoy working with the most. I've always really liked tensors, so that kind of lends itself to, since quantum field theory is relativistic, that's taught in the language or communicated in the language of tensors. So I get to work with those every day.
So we have a quick question from Nicolas Ruffin from PG County, Maryland.
Maryland?
Yeah. Saying LaTeX, Word, or pen?
Oh, I think that's a reference to one of my recent videos. Definitely LaTeX, for sure. I do my homeworks in LaTeX. I solve my problems in LaTeX. I hate erasing paper.
Yeah.
So if I can, or whiteboard. For me, it goes solve problems on whiteboard, then LaTeX, then paper. Word's not even on the list, I'm afraid.
So you haven't discovered iPads yet, or tablets?
Is it worth it? Do you think? I never really got into it.
Yeah, I ended up biting the bullet recently, and that's made. I would carry folders of loose leaf papers, and they would get all messy, and now just with a tablet, I'm codependent of it now.
Maybe I'll have to look into that.
Well, I don't know if you want to be codependent of anything. So, okay, so we have Mortiner sent us a link to the video, the Dyson video. So I'll forward that to you. Rachel White from Virginia again. She asks, do you collaborate with physics educators on high school level with your videos to promote that the knowledge is achievable?
So is it asking if I communicate with the people on YouTube who make like the, not lower level, but those kinds of videos, or what is it asking?
I think it's asking if you ever worked with high school teachers to use your videos as a way to promote that the content that you're working on is indeed achievable. So somewhat motivational.
No, that is a great idea. I have gotten contacted from certain teachers just like saying that they've used my videos and things and that they like them, which is very flattering. But no, I actually haven't reached out to like high schools or anything like that. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm always proven wrong with who my videos are for consistently. Like I think when I make the very technical videos, I'm like, well, no one really watches those to begin with, but I always expect that to be people who are more or less where I'm at because I make videos on what I've learned recently. But I still get messages or comments on those videos that are from high school students that stumble across them. So yeah, I don't really know. I haven't really explored what my role would be for the high school students. Normally it's like the undergrads who are already committed to physics. Think about that.
Maybe Rachel can tell us if she has any suggestions. Very good. So we have another question about your future plans in physics from Katarina Albrecht from Berlin, asking what are your plans for the future in physics, the usual way with postdocs work after your PhD, and maybe becoming a professor someday, or are you thinking about something else?
Yeah, I'm definitely on the trajectory of, after doing the PhD, going the postdoc route, seeing how many I have to do before I can secure a full-time faculty position. I've always been told it's just a waiting game for postdoc. You do them until you get a job. Can you speak on that at all? Well, I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I mean, I came here to Jefferson Lab as a postdoc, and then I was a postdoc at ODU. I was a postdoc for a total of 4 years. I loved being a postdoc.
Yeah.
I think postdocing is the best possible job. You somewhat, you got in your PhD, so people think that you know what you're doing, and you have minimal responsibilities other than just research. So it's quite a bit of fun. But
Well, that's good to know. I think I YouTubed postdoc one time, and the first thing that came up was why you shouldn't do a postdoc.
yeah,
But then I think the contents of the video were in the context of like wanting to go into industry in the first place.
right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty, and the pay is not as high, depending on where it is, to other jobs that you can find in industry. But if you like research, I felt like it was a privilege for me. So depends on everybody, of course. But there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's always challenging because it comes at a time where many people are, planning for life, for a family and things like that. And so it can be, there's other barriers that come in. Such is life. Okay, so we have, I think, one more question from Sergio Gam from Mexico, saying, if you can do a video with a famous YouTuber, who would it be?
I could do a video with a famous YouTuber. Maybe like PBS Space Time. That would be pretty cool. They have this incredible way of talking about complicated concepts and not dumbing it down, but still making it interesting.
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so I think we're almost out of time. So I'll ask you one last question, and then I think we'll call it a day. So I was interested to hear a little bit about this bold move that you took of moving to Virginia to New Mexico, and that was pretty bold. How did your family and like your loved ones react?
My parents reacted as any good parent should. They thought it was stupid. So the thing is I had other options. So I got into a couple of graduate schools, but I wanted to go to New Mexico State. So it was like you're moving across the country to a school you didn't get into when that's not your only option. You already, like, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And so they were very reserved with it at first, but they were supportive, and they became more supportive. I told them that this is risky, but no one is depending on me right now. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife or anything like that. This is the only time in my life where I can take a risk like this and it not affect other people. And when I put it that way, it seemed like they didn't necessarily agree with it, but they respected it.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure having you, and I'm sure we could keep talking indefinitely. So, but let me just remind people. So if you're new to REYES, if this is the first activity you're in, welcome. We have tons of different activities for the next couple of weeks. In fact, on Monday, we're going to have activity from a postdoc at Jefferson Lab who is a preservative QCD person. Her name is Carlota Andres, and she's going to be giving a talk about how to study the proton, how to visualize the proton. Jefferson Lab. She's a postdoc, and she just got a Marie Curie Fellow in Europe, so she's about to leave. Marie Curie fellowships are extremely prestigious, so it's a real pleasure to have her come and join us and give this one talk before she leaves. And also, Andrew is going to be in REYES one more time 2 weeks from now to do another trivia night about all the different materials that we've covered throughout all the activities. And so if you want to participate, we'll be sending out a survey to allow you to perhaps participate. So we're going to do a little random lottery. So if you're interested, go to the REYES website, which is odu.edu/REYES, and send us an email there, and we can add you to the survey. Okay. Thank you again, Andrew, for taking your time. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for a wonderful talk.
Absolutely, and thanks again for inviting me. This is great.
Great. All right. Bye, everybody. Take care.